Lauren's relationship with her in-laws was tense from the very start. She, of course, tried to avoid confrontations at all costs, but it was hard to stay calm when you were constantly being provoked. Her husband's mother was not an easy person, and the only one who could get along with her was Lauren's father-in-law, Ralph. Over the years, he had come to terms with his wife's character and overlooked all her quirks. Mario, Lauren's husband, had warned her right away that it wouldn't be easy. He said, "My mom is quite something, so be prepared." At the time, she just laughed it off, but that was a mistake. As soon as the newlyweds moved in together, Lauren's mother-in-law sprang into action. She could show up early on a weekend morning and start cleaning even if the apartment was already spotless. Or she would drag Lauren to the market for something that could be just as well bought at the corner store. Sometimes she would just come over, sit around, and spend the entire day watching what her son and daughter-in-law were doing. There was no escaping Amber, and if they did try to avoid her, she would put on a dramatic performance about not being loved and appreciated. She would tear her hair out, cry hysterically, and wail until Mario and Lauren apologized profusely. In the art of manipulation, she was second to none. She knew her son would tolerate it, and her daughter-in-law had no choice as she was living in the apartment that his parents had let them use. Lauren also had her own place, but it was a small house in a remote area. The location was inconvenient because both spouses worked on the other side of the city, making the commute very problematic. So, it was unanimously decided to renovate the apartment that was sitting unused by Mario's parents and move in there. The renovation took several months, and Lauren was already imagining how they would live until she realized that her mother-in-law actually lived nearby. Lauren's parents did not participate in any of this. They had moved abroad for permanent residence and were settling in there. To support the young couple, they had sent a decent sum of money for the renovation and considered their parental duty fulfilled. The couple dreamed of having children, but it was unanimously decided to wait until they could buy their own home. However, it was easier said than done. The necessary sum was accumulating very slowly, threatening to stretch the process over decades. "Lauren, what about selling your house?" Mario asked her one day. "It's not much, but it's still within the city limits. It would fetch a good price, and we could set the money aside for a down payment on an apartment." Mario was already thoughtfully calculating the cost in his head, confident that Lauren would agree, but she wasn't in a hurry to answer. After all, having your own property gives you a certain peace of mind. "I need to think about it," she said. "What's there to think about? It's standing empty anyway. This way we can get an apartment sooner and have a baby. Don't you want a baby?" Lauren preferred not to answer, as her husband's words smelled of cheap manipulation. At that moment, he very much resembled his mother. She even smiled. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Lauren worked at a logistics company. Recently, her boss hinted that she was up for a promotion due to her excellent performance. Lauren hoped that, with the promotion, her salary would increase, allowing her to save more. But she hadn't told Mario about this yet, not wanting to get his hopes up prematurely. What if it didn't work out? He might get offended. He had this flaw. He loved to play the injured innocence. Fortunately, it didn't last long and wasn't as epic as his mother's tantrums. Winter ended, and March came. Grass began to break through the frozen ground more and more, gradually covering larger areas and painting the city in bright shades of green. Lauren had a vacation coming up. She planned to spend it productively. She intended to go to her city country house, see what things could be thrown out and what could be kept, maybe do some repairs, or finally sell the house and the plot, which was still a consideration. After much deliberation, she decided to agree to her husband's proposal, as she longed for stability and, of course, wanted to have a baby. She didn't have time to tell Mario about her decision because he beat her to it. "Lauren, we're going to our country house." "Barbecue?" "No, though that's not a bad idea. We're going to my folks' country house." "They need help." "What kind of help?" "Well, digging, planting, painting, whitewashing, you know, little things." "You call such a load of work, little things?" Lauren asked, horrified. To her, it seemed like a Herculean task, as Lauren had never been to a real country house before. Her family didn't have one, and when she went to nature with her friends, it was usually for a relaxing time with a guitar and barbecue. "Honey, you won't be doing it all alone. I'll be there, and so will my mom and dad. We'll all manage together in a week, and then we can have a barbecue." "A week," Lauren groaned and collapsed into a chair. "I'll die there," Mario laughed. "No one has ever died from work, so pack your things, and we leave at 5 a.m. tomorrow." "Why so early? The country house isn't going to run anywhere, is it?" "To avoid working in the heat." Muttering something incoherent, Lauren reluctantly went to pack her things for the trip. "Only take the stuff you don't mind getting dirty." "Got it." Yawning sleepily and dozing off as she went, Lauren settled into the front seat of the car, next to her husband. "Don't fall asleep. We're picking up my folks now, and then we'll stop at the gas station for coffee." Under the steady hum of the engine, Lauren eventually dozed off. She was jolted awake by a rough shove to her shoulder. "What's the matter with you? Look at her. She's sleeping at that. Get out and give your husband's mother the front seat." "I'm carsick in the back," protested a sleepy Lauren, but she was unceremoniously yanked out of the car, and Amber took her place next to Mario. Lauren had to sit in the back and spent the whole trip praying she wouldn't throw up on her father-in-law's lap. She got out of the car and doubled over. Her stomach was clenched and nauseated, and her skin had taken on a pale green hue. Her father-in-law eyed Lauren suspiciously and kept his distance from her. "Look at her playing the victim, and who's going to work? We had to stop 3 times because of you, shameless. Now we'll have to work in the scorching sun because of you." "I told you I get carsick," Lauren groaned in protest and ran around the corner. When she returned, she looked even paler than before and practically collapsed into her husband's arms. "I feel awful. Hang in there, just a bit longer." Mario waved his hand at his mother. "Mom, we're going inside. Lauren needs to lie down." The woman muttered something under her breath, which wasn't audible, but the expression on her face made it clear that it was something unpleasant about her daughter-in-law. Lauren was allowed to rest for just a couple of hours before being roused, handed a hoe, and sent to weed the strawberry patch. "Enough lying around. Get up and work." After weeding a decent section of the plot and rubbing painful blisters on her hands, Lauren felt her stomach knot with hunger. She had no idea how long she had been working, but judging by the sun setting behind the horizon, it had been quite a while. It was strange that no one had called her for a meal. From what she had heard, her mother-in-law had called Mario and her father-in-law. But what about her? Was she not supposed to eat? She angrily threw the tool into the bushes and trudged back to the house. There was a lively conversation going on inside, and it seemed everyone had forgotten about her existence. "So, folks, are we going to eat today?" Lauren decided to remind them of her presence by asking the question that was most on her mind. Hearing her question, Mario lowered his eyes. "Well, look, who's here? I finally remembered to ask. You couldn't have asked any later. There's nothing left to feed you. We ate everything. You were wandering around, dying. Who knew you'd recover by evening? You'll eat tomorrow. You won't die from not having supper for once." "Mario," Lauren was in shock. She had expected her husband to stand up for her, but he remained silent. "Thanks a lot, in-laws. Thanks a lot, dear husband. I'm going to bed." She lay down on the bed, still in her clothes, and sobbed. Everything seemed to be going wrong. And Mario, it seemed she had dozed off and woke up to the sound of rustling. She opened her eyes and saw her husband. He had sat down beside her on the bed and smiled, apologetic. "So, you came to gloat, huh? Go away. Get out of my sight. I'm not in the mood." "Lauren, please don't be mad. I understand, and I'm ashamed. I messed up, I admit it, and as an apology, I want to give you a tiny present." Like a magician, he pulled a paper bag from behind his back and handed it to Lauren. "What's this?" "Open it and see." As soon as she opened the bag, the room was filled with the aroma of food. "You brought me something to eat." "I couldn't leave my girl hungry." Her husband smiled and kissed her. "Thank you. But forgive me, I'm truly sorry. So I drove to the cafe and ordered a takeaway." "I forgive you," Lauren said, already chewing on a burger. The morning greeted her with the gentle touch of a sunbeam on her cheek. Lauren stretched and got up. Mario was already gone. She leisurely washed her face and brushed her teeth. Then she went outside. Mario was methodically working with a shovel at the other end of the plot, but her in-laws were nowhere to be seen. Deciding to help her husband, she walked around the house to get a shovel. But then she heard voices and involuntarily froze, listening because she heard her name. It was her father-in-law and mother-in-law talking, and at first, the conversation seemed strange and incomprehensible to her. But then everything became perfectly clear. Mario said that Lauren wants to sell her house. So what if she does? What does it matter to us? How can you say, what does it matter to us? Don't you think that's unfair to our son? What do you mean unfair? I'm afraid I'm not following. Ralph, use your brain for once. Why don't you? She'll sell her property and then depend on Mario. She'll squander the money. I'm sure of that, and that's it. But that house isn't even hers. As far as I remember, it belongs to her parents. That means she will put it in her name in order to sell it, and Mario will end up paying for everything. In what sense is paying for everything? And let him pay, although I don't understand what he has to pay for. Why do you care? He's her husband. It's not like he's spending your money. Wake up, for God's sake. I think we should demand that Lauren re-register that house of hers in both their names, or better yet, just in Mario's. Wow, honey, you've really gone off the deep end here. Why? Because I'm sick of her getting everything for free here. She'll sell the house. They'll buy an apartment with that money, and then bam, a divorce and division of property. And if she has a child, then our Mario will be left with nothing. I told him that there was no need to baby her. This Lauren needs to be put in her place and taught a lesson. Look at her. So delicate, she gets car sick. Can you believe it? Wasn't fed, my ass. She could have gotten up and cooked for the family instead of wandering around. But you sent her to weed the strawberries. And did you see the mess she made? Now our strawberries have all been trampled into the ground. Why are you so worked up? What has she done to you? Because I decided so. If Mario doesn't listen to me, I'll ask them both to leave. No need to live in our apartment for free. Lauren listened, unable to move. So this is what her mother-in-law wants, to put the house in her husband's name. And the worst part is, she guessed right. Lauren had already gone to a notary this month to prepare the paperwork for the re-registration, as her parents were far away, and she wanted to sell the house quickly. But now Lauren decided she didn't want that anymore. With a mother-in-law like this, she needed to be cautious. Rushing to her husband, she said, without explaining, "I'm leaving for the city. Are you coming with me?" To her surprise, Mario immediately agreed, and without saying goodbye, they got into the car. Once inside, Lauren told him everything that had built up inside her. Honey, yes, my mother and I had that conversation, I won't deny it, but I immediately told her that it won't be the way she wants, and it's all nonsense. I don't understand why she even came up with this and why. Lauren believed her husband, but she had already made up her mind. Mario, let's go to the notary. Why? Because I want to cancel everything. I had already started the process of re-registering the house in my name. But you know, don't take it personally. I've changed my mind about selling this house at all. And in general, I think we should move into my folks' place. But isn't it silly? It's silly to wait until your mother completely loses it and kicks us out, and I'm sure that's what will happen. She said so herself. They discussed this issue for a long time, but in the end, everything was resolved unexpectedly. Lauren's parents, having learned about their daughter's situation, stepped in and helped her buy an apartment. However, they registered it in their names. After all, Amber was quite a character, capable of anything. Lauren loved her husband very much, and didn't blame him for his mother's actions and words, but they still decided to be cautious. When her mother-in-law found out, she came over and made a scene. But then even Lauren was surprised. Mario, who usually remained silent in his mother's presence, stood up and told her everything. And keep this in mind, Mom, if you try to ruin our marriage or weave intrigues behind our backs, you won't be welcome in our home. No need for hysterics. Calm down. Remember, I stand with my wife and have no claim to her property. Got it? She'll dump you one day. You'll see. If you're hoping for that, you'll be disappointed. That's not going to happen, Mom. And one more thing. Lauren and I are expecting a child, so you, my dear, are soon going to be a grandmother, so decide for yourself if you want to be involved in your grandchild's life or not. Of course I want to. Then cool your temper and stop these arguments, all right? To the entire family's surprise, Amber actually changed. She remained as irritable as ever, but she loves her grandson dearly and restrains her outbursts for his sake. And little Louis adores his beloved, kind grandmother.